Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sheila Jaffe. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, Sheila. You're such a lovely person to chat with.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and a fellow dog lover, right? It's the dog pillows, as they call them in the States, or cushions. They are often remarked upon. Sheila has a little a doggy called Tilly, who's
Yes.
13, and a rescue. So that's like it brings there's so much stuff that brings up for us adoptees. Sheila is an adoptee, and she is also the co-founder of the Felix Organization, where I found out about her, which she started with Darryl McDaniel from Run DMC, people of that kind of vintage music will know, which sort of vintage Run DMC is kind of early 90s, would it? Late
Yeah,
80s?
early days of hip hop.
Yeah.
They kind of crossed the barrier between rock and roll and hip hop with Walk This Way. There was that famous video of Aerosmith and doing Walk This Way, which is their song,
Yeah.
and DMC breaking down the wall and joining
Yeah.
them. So it
Yeah.
was like a combination of two genres of
Yeah.
music.
I think that was 80s actually, but I'm not
I
100%
think it
sure.
was the 80s too. I think you're
Yeah.
right about the
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah. So, Sheila, as an adoptee, the dog stuff, right? What does it bring up for you?
The
What?
dog stuff, well,
Yeah.
it's
Tilly.
just like Tilly, I always had rescue animals. And it's kind of like, not that I want to say we're like, well, it's kind of similar scenario. It's just like when you are there available for adoption, it's because there was no parent to take you home. And then you were fortunate enough to get taken home. Not everybody does, you know. And so the dog, it kind of, it's a full circle for me.
Yeah.
I don't
Me and my
know.
wife's first dog was a rescue puppy in the sense that there was a charity that took in um, uh, dogs that were going to give birth and kept the puppies until I found a home
Oh,
I
that's
found
so
for them.
sweet. No, that's
Yeah.
a good idea. Tilly was in a shelter and she was about, well, they always tell you they're about between 1.5 and 2. So I think she's 13. She could be, 12. She could be 14. But she had been in foster care. They had foster because when they're in the shelter, she was on the to kill list because nobody claimed.
Ah,
So this rescue group found her foster home, and then they had an adoption fair. And I had been thinking about, I had 3 cats who passed away, and I was thinking about another animal, and that maybe it was time for a dog again. I've like alternated in my life, dog, cat, dog,
yeah,
cat.
yeah. And Sheila was telling me before we started recording that the first day that you got her, she ran home. She ran back to the
Yeah.
uh, the foster home. Yeah, is that yeah?
She ran to where the pet fair was,
Oh,
where
the
her
pet fair.
foster family had dropped her off. And she, I think, was looking for them because she had lived with them for, I think, 4 weeks. And that's what made me fall in love with her, really. I saw her picture online, and I knew she was going to be at this rescue. And I was passing by the rescue place and I thought, oh, yeah, that's where that dog is going to be today. Let me, go meet her. And I saw her come in with her foster family and they put her in this cage. And I went over to the cage, and the foster family went away. And I started trying to play with her, and she was like non-responsive, nothing. Didn't look at me, just looked away from me. The water fell over in the cage. She wet her paw. She didn't move. I thought there's something wrong with the dog. Like, what's wrong with her? And then she saw her foster mom and she got so excited and so loving and recognized her from down the aisle, where the foster mom was walking. And I was like, I love this dog because she's so loyal. She's so in love with this woman, and she was just looking for her. And so that was it for me and Tilly. I was like, yeah, you were coming with me. And I
Yeah.
took her, and she was a little dirty, so I brought her in to get a bath, and I picked her up from the bath and had her on the leash, and she slipped her head out of the collar, and bolted. And she was heading back towards where the adoption fair was, looking, I think, for that woman, like, and she ran and ran, and I had somebody chase her. The guy who had just given her a bath came out of the store, and he was chasing her, and he couldn't catch her, and she crossed major streets. He said, I had eyes on her. I couldn't get her. It was about 15, 20 minutes later, and no collar, no nothing on her. And I called the adoption place. They sent a car out looking for her. And all of a sudden, I was standing by my parked car. It was in LA, and I saw her running down the street towards my car. And she wouldn't come to me. She went to the car. And fortunately, there were these two young guys getting out of their car, and she went to them, like, help me, and they picked her up. And they said, is this your dog? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I just got her. I said, I don't know, but yeah, yeah, put her in my car. And that was it. So it was, she was trying to get back to something familiar, and she was so smart, and I guess, I don't know, her scent was so great that she didn't know me. She didn't know the car, but she knew she had been in there, and came back running down the street fast, like a bullet. I mean, it was traumatic, and it brought back a lot of abandonment issues for me, and fear of losing something, and just thinking I was a terrible mother, and just it was traumatic. But we got through
Yeah.
it.
And how was the bonding process with you
Slow.
and Tilly?
Very slow. Nobody trusted anybody for that next week. I didn't breathe. She didn't breathe. Um, um, and I was telling friends of mine, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can. I don't think this is a good fit. I just can't do it. I can't take the responsibility. What if she runs away again? Bah, 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 bah. It was really, really hard. And I had a friend over one night after I had Tilly with me for a week, and she hardly looked at me. We didn't communicate. She didn't bark. She was happy I fed her. That was nice, but it wasn't like, I mean, she had just come from, losing her family, then losing her foster family, then being in a shelter. And I tried everything I could. And then finally, a friend of mine said, look, if you need to rehome her, I'll help you. I said, I think I might have to. And other friends of mine tried to make me feel very guilty, like, how can you give back an animal? How can you do that? How can you take somebody home? And and it brought up all kinds of obviously adoption feelings, like, how can somebody, like, what if somebody gave me back because I was crying, or I was colic or something, and said, oh no, this one was a mistake. So I was really torn and confused. And so my friend was there, and she said, she's so cute, or you're so happy. I said, no, I'm not that happy. And I don't know, I don't think I'm going to keep her. And she was I was in a studio apartment in LA, and she was on the bed and I was on the couch. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, I think tomorrow I'm gonna, try to find a new home. I just don't think I'll be doing the right thing for her. And we're not communicating, we're not anything. And she jumped off the bed, came to the couch, came over to me and kissed me. And I said, well, I guess that's the end of that. I think I'm going to keep her. So that was that. So she knew, I don't know. It's just magic. And then we bonded.
You bonded, yeah.
Yeah.
When you gave up, when you were on the point of giving up, she came to you.
Yes. I don't know how she knew. I mean, I just said it to my friend, and she was like, "Uh-oh, I better stay here. This lady is like a food
Yeah,
machine. I better
yeah.
stay with
A
her.
food
That's
machine.
where the food comes."
Yeah. Well, we've got two Labradors, right? Yeah, food machine. Yeah, yeah. Or maybe it just took that long to click.
It
I
did,
don't
it
know.
did. And it just it, it just takes a lot of patience. And I guess it's the same, look, I'm going to relate it to adoption, like when our parents adopt us, our mother, our adoptive mother, if she never had children before, was never pregnant, doesn't know that, wasn't used to anything about a baby or anything. I'm sure they went through the same kind of feelings. Like, what do I do? This is now in my life forever. This being, I'm responsible for this being, which, there was no sense of knowing each other prior to that. I mean, I've never been pregnant, but I can imagine that you're pregnant. You feel something inside of you. It's part of you, So our adoptive parents didn't have that experience with us, nor us with them,
No.
you know.
So we're on dogs 3 and 4 now, right? So our first dog was the one that I was mentioning. That was Nellie. The first time I saw her, she was surrounded. She was in a foster home, and she was the last of the litter. The only one left, really. Um, and but the place was full of the house was full of cats. And like, anyway, Nellie, she didn't have the name Nellie at that point, but she came over to say hello and just kind of closed her teeth on my finger. She didn't bite me, but she just, not even a nip, but uh, that felt like this one's ours, right? And maybe we were
Right.
just there because we were taken away from the cats. Um, and the and we were devastated when she died. So long, we lasted 2 weeks before we were going to get to check out another one. And when we went to see the second one, she did the same thing.
Oh, wow.
She did the same thing, and that uh, brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, and but I don't remember the first dog crying on the first night, but the second dog, Lexi, she cried on the first night, and I don't know how many nights after
Oh,
that she cried. But when I hear when I heard that, I thought, was I like that?
right.
And well, not
Well,
of
we'll
course, but
never know, will we?
I was 5 weeks old, so I don't
You were
know.
5 weeks old, yeah. I was 6 days old, but I would know I was in the hospital for those 6 days, and I often think like, what was that like? Like with my dog, with Tilly, the first week I had her before we did kind of bond, she would sleep far away from me under something in a curled up little ball, like under a desk or under something. And if I went, she wouldn't bite me, but she would like let me know that she could bite me. She'd make a little growl and turn her head, but didn't nip or anything, but it was just like, leave me alone. And I think about for those 6 days, who held me? Just the nurse on duty? I mean, what kind of emotional support did this little baby get for 6 days? Just different nurses. Like, there was no grandma, grandpa, or, mommy or daddy holding and loving and kissing. So I think that is a very, very primal wound to quote that book, for us adoptees. Those minutes that you come out, just those. seconds that you're in the world. Nothing's familiar, no
Nothing's
smell.
familiar.
And if it's a different nurse for the 5 weeks that you were wherever you were, and I was in the hospital for the 6 days, they all had different smells, so you don't know where you belong. Nothing's
Don't
consistent.
don't you think that the creativity of our brains can really go to town on this? Like make a mountain out of a molehill or a molehill of a mountain. We have no clue, do we?
We have no clue. Here's what I know in my life. Whenever I had a new boyfriend or a new friend of any kind, and anytime I was invited to their home to meet their parents, I um, adapted. Just one letter different from adoption. Adoptees can adapt, and I adapted to their environment to the point where they all always wanted me to be part of their family. It's like a skill set that we develop to fit in, to belong. For me, that's true. I don't know if you've experienced that, but they all always like any boyfriend I had, they're like, oh my God, she's part of the family. And they also then claim me, you know, genetically. Oh no, you're Italian. Oh no, no, you're Spanish. Oh no, and whatever they told me, I believed. I was like, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, I could be. I'm Italian. I'm Irish. I'm this. I'm that. So I always was trying to fit in, and I think that's the creativity. Like you know how to like do that. You could fit into different scenarios.
Uh, and we can view we can view that as a good thing or a bad thing or a good thing and a bad thing or a I,
It's a thing. It's just a thing. I think it's something that we have to come to terms with. It's our need, I think, to feel that we are worthy to be here and we exist. And, you know, I mean, uh, because I think there's really no language for adoption. I mean, when you find out you're adopted, the language is usually something like you were given up for adoption. So all that sticks in my head when I heard was given up. You're just given up. It's a negative. It's not, it's too cumbersome to say it any other way. Your birth mother wanted a better life for you, so she looked for a better home. And it's also kind of bullshit, you know. That's not the case that they searched to get the great home for you. Maybe some did. Mine didn't. It was just like, oh, here's a baby. These other people wanted a baby. And so I think that, you know, the language is just it's just you feel given up on. I mean, in my case, I was just came out and never saw that lady again, never knew who she was, didn't know anything about my chapter one. I think we all have a chapter one adoptees. We start our life on it's chapter two. Sheila Jaffe is chapter two. That's no, I was not born Sheila Jaffe. I do have a chapter one.
and yet as you've been sharing what you've been sharing, we've been talking about the dogs and the abandonment issues and all those sorts of things. There's been a smile on your face as you've been talking about that.
Well, because I've been dealing with it for so many years, it's kind of like I'm at a point, I think, in my life where it's like you're resolved to it and you come out, it's destiny. I was destined to be Sheila Jaffe, and I'm glad I was. I've learned great lessons from my father, um, um, less from my mother because everything about adoption that was negative was her fault. Not my father's fault. It was my mother's fault because I guess I found out when I was like 11. So I don't know. I just blame my mother. I mean, girls and their mothers, I think, like, have a commonality of, a time where they don't get along and stuff. And I have remorse about it, how I treated her. but it was also part of me was like, I didn't want to believe that I didn't belong to the Jaffes. Like, where did I belong? Who did I belong to? So I clung to my father. I could lose one of them, but I couldn't lose both of them. So I had this whole little fantasy in my head. Oh, my father had an affair with somebody. She got pregnant. I'm really my father's daughter. I tried to make sense of everything on my own because my parents never talked to me about being adopted because it was a long time ago and adoption was a negative. It was a negative. It wasn't like people weren't proud to say, I'm adopted. It wasn't like a good thing. It was different and it was a minority. I didn't know one other person who was adopted growing up, and it was a secret. Like, don't tell her. That's my message. I didn't find out till I was 11 because don't tell her. She can't know. There's something wrong with it. And I think why I smile now is because there's nothing wrong with it. And now if I ever meet another adoptee, I tell everybody, and oh, he's adopted. I just blurt it out. You were out of the closet. And it's not, as- I don't want it to be a negative thing. I mean, I know some people that had bad experiences with their adoptive family, but they might have had worse experience with their birth family. I don't know the answer to that. For me, I now know who my birth family was, and I'm glad I grew up the way I grew up. I'm glad I'm a Jaffe.
Yeah. Why?
I
What did
just
you
had
learn?
good parents, and I just had parents that uh, filled me with a lot of common sense. My father was he just had a lot of good life lessons. They were simple people. They were working class people, but I don't know, he had a good sense of humor. You know, he taught me important little things and knowing when I found out, I think my birth father was like kind of similar. It's weird. I think he was kind of, I didn't meet him, but I met a brother. And, from what he told me, he seemed like a decent guy who was a restaurant owner. That's another thing that was weird. So, my birth father, I was in the restaurant business for years. And when I met my birth brother, I told him, and he said, well, it doesn't surprise me because everybody in our family was in the restaurant business. My father owned a restaurant in Arizona. I mean, it just everybody was in the restaurant business. And from what I learned about my birth mother, she wasn't particularly a nice person, and she was plagued with depression after giving up a child for adoption. Like she never dealt with it, and you know, she knew my name. She never looked for me. I had to do all the work. They both had passed by the time I found them because, all my records were sealed. I think where you come from, they're open when you're 18. Now in New York, the records are open, but they weren't for years.
Yeah. It varies state to state
Yeah.
in the US as I understand it. And I think it's the same across, we across the United Kingdom, right? England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Wales. Um, I think it's the same law applies because basically London has more power than Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just odd to me that they aren't open because most of us, when we start looking, are older than the woman was when she gave birth to us, but yet her rights are much more important than our rights.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another reason to get cheesed off about that, to put it bluntly, about the situation, right?
Yeah, I think what would be nice is if like when a woman I don't pretend to think it's easy for a woman to make that decision to place a child up for adoption. I'm sure it's difficult on many levels. I mean, some women may be too young, may just at their wits' end, some just can't afford it, whatever. But I think a really nice thing would be as if part of the adoption process, I wasn't through an agency, I was a private adoption, but if the birth mother had to, as part of giving up the rights to the child, write a letter to the child. So the child doesn't feel like I was just thrown away. These are the circumstances surrounding your birth, and this is why
Yeah.
I had to find another home for you. I think that would be like uh, something to hold to our heart, just to know that we weren't that disposable. Because I think that plagues us, somewhat. Even if you go to years of therapy and everything, it's an kind of icky feeling.
Yeah. And yet you know that you've said that your birth mother was depressed off the back of that.
She was
that
depressed. She never dealt with it. And my brother, when I found him, he said meeting me explained a lot about how his mother was, or our mother, our shared mother, was towards him. Like she was not loving, she was not cuddly, she didn't want to. And when he had a child, she didn't want to hold it. She didn't like being around infants, so she never
it
dealt
was
with her own, issues about it. I'm sure it
it
was
was all
hard.
too
She wasn't
much.
young, she was 26, so she wasn't a baby, but she was an unmarried woman at the time. And I guess, in a, I don't know. I think her
Yeah.
family disowned her. I don't know the whole story about her.
Yeah. I want to go back to the smiling through the difficulty, right?
Yeah.
This that you've been doing for our along for this conversation today. Have you heard of have you heard of this term psychological flexibility? Yeah,
No,
sounds good, doesn't it? Um, it's about a change in how we feel about our feelings. So to me, it sounds like there's been a change about how you feel about your feelings.
well, I think so. Well, the change for me really was coming to terms with it and doing something for people that didn't get adopted and starting an organization to work with kids in foster care. So for me, in a way, I'm happy I was adopted because it opened my eyes to this whole other thing to do in life. I met another adoptee, Darryl McDaniels, and we had never, neither one of us had really talked to another adoptee about our feelings. And it was really interesting because we had so many. I do that. Oh, yeah. Do you get like it was just a lot of shared things, like I was talking before about fitting in with families and this need to excel in whatever you're doing to be good at it. You know, he's like a pioneer of rap music. I won an Emmy for casting, like we have a need to prove our worth. And then through meeting him, we came to this conclusion that we were really fortunate that we got taken home because it is luck of the draw. I'm in the bed next to you. It's not like those books that they give you, you were chosen, you're special. No, no, you weren't chosen. You weren't a melon in a supermarket that they picked that melon instead of that melon. You were just available. You were fortunate that it was you and not the kid next to you. So we both came to that conclusion that we were fortunate. And there were kids that, don't get taken home, that wind up in foster care or in group homes or, years ago, orphanages, which nobody has any, well, they have in some countries, but not here. Um, and it enabled us to start doing something for these kids. And I think it really enhanced my life and Daryl's life. And I think it kind of made us okay and proud even to be adopted. So
Yeah,
we took the negative of like, you know, you're adopted. You're the only one in the I mean, I don't know if a lot of adoptees are listening, but we are a minority. And even if you're in a room with, I don't know, you're at a lecture, you're at a play, and somebody says, "Who here is adopted?" Not a lot. There's not a lot of us, there's just
yeah,
not. and it's a minority that has never been like, I don't know, acknowledged the right way and still has a negative thing. Because when I tell people I'm adopted, which I blurt out, it's like almost the first thing you'll know about me. Oftentimes, the person I'm telling says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like that's the knee-jerk reaction. Do you know your real mother? That's the next question. And you're like, yes, I do. The real mother is the mother took care of me when I was sick, who fed me, it's like with the dog. It's like now I'm the real mother. No, that yeah, I don't know. That is the real mother. So there's still no language to go back to what I said at the beginning about adoption, you know.
Yeah,
And I don't know why I'm laughing and smiling about it, but I guess that term, they said, like, yes, I've come to that place in my life where I just accept who
yeah,
I am and my circumstances, and they don't define me. I think for many years, adoption defined me in my own psyche. I was like, oh, I'm adopted. Oh, I'm adopted. She's not, nobody else is adopted. I'm adopted. And it was like, oh, woe is me. And I don't feel that way anymore.
yeah. And was the Felix finding the Felix organization with Darryl, was that the change point, or the
I
change
think
point
so.
coming
I
before
think
then?
that was the catalyst. And also, after many failed attempts at searching, because the records were sealed, so you had to search. You had to be sometimes in a position to hire someone to help you search, an investigator, a private investigator. It was very difficult, but I think finding all my pieces helped also. I don't know if I would be so relaxed if I never knew my chapter one, where I came from, what
Yeah,
did my who was my birth mother, my birth father, what ethnicity, what religion, what anything, just information, medical history. Don't you all get really annoyed when you go to a doctor and they say any family history in that stupid questionnaire and they never say, if you're adopted, skip this thing? Like, just don't make us go through that because we have to write, I don't know. I am adopted, you know.
yeah. Well, we say we say here in Britain, if you don't, this isn't adoption specific, right? This is a cultural thing, right? If you don't laugh, you cry. That's
Correct. Correct.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm through with the crying. I mean, I honestly, I cried enough tears over not knowing, you know. I think, your teenage years are the worst. And, like, I mean, and then finding out, I don't know, it's just so interesting. Like, when Darryl and I started getting into this adoption thing, I decided I was going to do a documentary, right? And I ran around interviewing adoptees. Nothing ever happened with it because I didn't have a B-roll. I'm not a filmmaker. But it was very therapeutic for me. I interviewed all these adoptees to find out how they felt about things. And there were some adoptees that like didn't get adopted till they were two. There were some adoptees that got adopted at birth. There was some that always knew. There were some that didn't know till they were 21. Darryl didn't know till he was 35. I didn't know till I was 11. And some people actually had whole other names. Like the woman who gave birth to them actually named them. Like their name was Mary until they got adopted. And then their name was, Susan or something. And like to find that out about yourself, it's like weird. It's like I was female Shack when I was born. She didn't name it, just female Shack. But then that was that half of me. Here's like female Shack. And then this part was Sheila, and I could step into either. I mean, how many names do you have? One, right? If you get married, maybe you change your last name. But I had this whole other image of there's this female Shack who grew up in LA. Her mother was a school teacher. I wouldn't be Sheila Jaffe, who grew up in New York, who was exposed. So it's like just so bizarre. And then I think about people that actually had whole names. Like somebody took enough time to think about what's her name going to be, and then, didn't
yeah,
bother to raise her. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. there's a lot of things, there's still a lot of like weird adoption things, but
Yeah,
we all made it through, right? We're all doing okay, so
yeah. My birth mother Pat gave me a name. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Why? You know what I mean? Like, why? Did you ever meet her and ask her?
no, no. I, I know why though. I can,
She was going to keep you.
I can. Well, um, no, she wasn't. She wasn't going to keep me. That she had made a plan. I haven't talked about this recently, but I got it's a bit of a weird metaphor story. Between school and college, I worked in a coffee factory, and the coffee would come on a conveyor belt, and it's all in the little vacuum sealed
Mm,
bricks of coffee, right? Yeah.
right,
And then just before the packs got put into a box, uh, a device would test the vacuum, right? And then if the vacuum had gone somehow in the production process, this little arm would come out and knock the coffee into a box, right? Knock it off so it didn't get knock it into a bin, right?
right.
Rather than allowing it to be
To go
packed
on
with the
the,
other.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, so it was rejected, right?
Right.
So um, so when I heard about my story and the fact that she'd made an adoption plan before I was born, that meant to me that she didn't reject me. I didn't come out and she said, "I don't want this one." Right? The decision was made before I was before she'd given birth to me, and that
Right.
that meant something to me. It meant that it wasn't personal. What
Oh,
happened wasn't personal. Does that sound I mean, you mentioned weird. That does sound a bit weird, but
yeah.
like it's true, right?
Well, I think that, however, you have to piece your feelings and your story together makes sense to you, you know? I mean, I I think my birth mother had a plan because it was through a doctor, that she went to, who set it up with an aunt of mine who knew that my parents were trying to have a baby and my mother couldn't conceive. Um, so she had a plan, but I was kind of out of desperation. I don't know. I
Yeah,
wasn't through
well,
an agency. It was like, were you through an agency?
yeah, I don't. I think that's just where they get people get signposted to, right? You get, you ask
I was like private, like it was a hush hush. I don't know, different.
they didn't have the internet, right, to go and find it out.
No, they didn't have
They
internet.
just like the first person that said, right, this is the route to go. They probably went that
Yeah,
route,
they
right?
probably went down that route,
They
right?
probably went down that route, whether it's an
Yeah.
agency or a doctor.
They didn't know. Yeah, yeah.
They
They
didn't
didn't
they
know.
didn't know.
They didn't know
Uh,
what to do. Was your birth mother young?
22,
Yeah,
22.
so not a baby. I
Not
mean,
a baby.
some were really young and desperate, like 16. And I remember when I first started dabbling into the world of adoption, getting curious about, I've searched on and off my whole life up until I found her. I mean, there were like four, like door number one, door number two, door number three. There was like door number one was wrong, door number two was wrong, door number three was wrong, but finally I persisted, but with years of gaps in between, because it took a lot of strength and resolve to start again. because when you go down that rabbit hole and nothing happens, it depletes you. You're like, I don't know what to do. I don't, and you kind of put it in a back burner until something for me kicks up. Some people never want to search. I I was too curious. I always want to know, did anybody look like me? Who did I look like? What was my, medical history? What was my ancestry? I was curious. I needed to know. I needed to know everything about myself. Some people just like, no, I don't care. My mother's my mother. I'm not looking. But I'd be always like, don't you want to know who you look like? Didn't you ever, you never saw anybody that you looked like in your whole family, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a spectrum of curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to sit on the subway and look at people and think, oh, she looks like me. Maybe that's my cousin. Oh, he looks like me. Maybe that's like a brother, And I also, because I was an only child, wanted to know, did I have brothers or sisters? That
Yeah.
was always a thing that I wanted to, I really did. I wanted to know if I had, and then I found out I have two brothers, one on each side.
Was it, people call it mother hunger, right? Was a lot of it related to wanting a different, or was any of it related to wanting a better mother than your adopted mother?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a hard time with my mother. Yeah. I wanted Ava Gardner to be my mother. I wanted somebody glamorous and beautiful to be my mother. I think all adoptees have that fantasy. For me, it was Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner. They were my parents. They had me when they were,
Yeah.
after they broke up and they didn't want it. But I had a friend whose fantasy was to be a princess, and her mother, and she was royalty. She found out she was German royalty, that the
Yeah.
royal mother had an affair with the gardener or something and couldn't keep the baby. So she was royalty. But I think we all have that fantasy. A friend of mine wanted Harry Belafonte was her father. We just come up with these, fantasies and like so much better than,
Yeah.
yes, I did. I did have that. But,
But
like
that's your creative streak, is it? As well?
I guess, I don't know. My mother was never, I just judged her so hard, man. When I found out I was adopted, she unfortunately said the wrong thing to me, and I held it against her for many years. She, when I found out I was adopted, they brought me to a doctor, and the doctor took me into his office. I was 11 and told me. Now, I had heard from a girl in the street that was mad at me. She blurted out, "You're adopted. Your mother doesn't care about you anyhow." And I was like, "What is she talking about? I'm adopted." Like, but like, why is she saying that to me? I confronted my mother, who said to me, "Well, what would be so terrible if you were?" And I knew then that she didn't have the courage to tell me. I knew it was true. That confirmed it for me because that was a strange response. And she remained silent for a really long time. And then when she said that, what would be so terrible if you were, I wanted to hurt her. And so I said, it would be the worst thing in the world. And I left the room. And then she and my father told me the next day I had to go to see the doctor. Now, the doctor was a man that I only associated with pain, needles, illness, sickness. So they took me to the doctor and they took me inside the room. Now, at those days, the doctor, I'm sure, family doctor was, I'll handle it when the time comes. I'll tell her. Because my parents were at a loss. They didn't, they were fearful. They didn't want me not to love them. They waited too long. They didn't know how to incorporate talking about adoption throughout my younger years. Um, And the doctor told me this story that I just thought was, like, horrible and made no sense, and but I was the good little adoptee and I just sat there quiet, listening to him in terrible, terrible agony and torture. My parents are outside. The doctor says to me, your parents love you very much. I hear them through the door saying, that's right, we do. And I just, it was just, talking about it right now, it just like brings back such anxiety and such horrible, horrible, horrible memories. So I'm like trying to speed through it because I don't want to dwell. The point being, when I came out, I ran to my mother and I said, who is my real mother? That's all I want to know. Who is my mother? I've just been told that you're not my parents. You're not my mother and father. My whole life has been a lie. Like, like I have another mother. Like who are these people? And she, unfortunately, out of her own fear, and now I recognize it and I know it, but then I was the child. She needed to comfort me. She said, well, any cat can have kittens. And that did it for me in my relationship with my mother. I went, don't you call my mother a cat. That was me being angry and hurt and misunderstood and a child. I didn't know better. She needed to know better. And I held it against her for many, many, many years. And I clung to my father because he didn't say anything. He was just there. Period. The end. That's the horror of my adoption story. And I feel bad. And I know my mother suffered. She didn't know that she said anything wrong. She just didn't know.
I a good friend of mine in the adoptee community, Jude, who's been on the show a couple of times. Um, she said my adoptive mother told me that I was adopted the first time she held me, which was at the hospital, right? Because she knew that if she didn't tell me then, she'd never have the courage to say it. And I've got goosebumps as I say that because I just can't help but feeling it would. What if, what if your adoptive mum had done that for you?
No,
And
they kept it a secret. They kept it a secret. And they kept it a secret for many reasons, which I found out later. Like when I have all my adoption papers now, the birth mother never signed the second release. So she never, in the eyes of the law uh, in New York, relinquished her rights to me. They were supposed to sign it twice, once right at birth, and then they give them 30 days in case they change their mind. And she left town. And my parents, um, so I lived in their home as a foster kid, which I never knew, but I didn't have a birth certificate. I wasn't approved for filing for the first 5 years of my life. And my parents lived in fear that I was going to be taken from them. So I think that's why they kept it a secret. They didn't want anyone to know, including me, you know, but I, I didn't find this out till way later, way later. I was never allowed to talk about being adopted. If I said, do you know anything? Have you ever met the mother? My father would get up from the table. That's it. You don't love us. And my mother would go in the bathroom and cry. Now, I think she was crying because the fear that somebody from the state was going to come knock on the door and say, sorry, the house isn't big enough. You don't make enough money. We're taking, the child. So I think they lived in secret of it was like the whole thing was a secret. Having me there was a secret. Looking for the birth mother to get the, piece of paper signed. They had to do all that until I was about five, 4.5 or 5, and they went to and finally um, the judge um, found for them, said, the birth mother has, the adoptive parents, the foster parents have done all they could to locate the birth mother, and the birth mother cannot be found. They had a private investigator, this, that. She left no forwarding address, and, they said,
But they still didn't tell you at that point.
no,
Your parents didn't tell you at
no,
that
they
point.
never told me. Weird, right? I think what,
Yeah, it's fear. I mean, I connected with my birth father three years ago, right, on the phone. I rang him out of the blue.
you did? What'd you
Yeah.
say? No, I know what you said. I have reason to believe. Do we all say that? I
Well,
have reason to believe
we
we
have
might be
reasons to believe.
related.
Anyway, the guy didn't want to know. So, and it, like you, I had that. It helped me see that I was fortunate. It helped me see my good fortune,
Right, right,
you know,
right.
um, because of the way that the guy was. Um, and I think one of the challenges we have is, you said that people tell you yeah, they're concerned about you, or where's your real mum, or what, isn't
Yeah.
that a shame, or whatever. The other thing that people can do is, oh, you should be grateful that you got,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that kind of forced gratitude thing. And I think it makes us, as adoptees, it can make us allergic to gratitude in any part of our lives. It's so we've got an internal anti-gratitude campaign
I
going
think
on,
you're right. I think
you
you're
know.
right.
And I know for me, I I I have historically often focused on what's missing rather than what isn't.
Hmm. I understand that. Did you always know you were adopted?
Yeah. So the shame thing, and the I think it's greatly it's greatly reduced. But I also think we've all got different levels of curiosity and creativity, um, we've got we all react differently to a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Some of us, some of our creativity, yeah, I don't know.
For
It
me,
seems
I
to be
guess
there.
I always thought it was shameful and it was something bad. And I remember when I found out, I had always been kind of like a good girl, hung out with good girls. I only wanted to hang out with the bad people in the neighborhood, the the people that weren't that bright and that were like tough, or, like, because I just thought I was, I should be bad. Like I wasn't really wanted by anybody, so I would hang out with the, like in the Bronx, there were like tough guys that had gangs and girls that were left back 5 times. Those are the people I wanted to hang out with.
There's something changed at some point, did it?
Yeah, it changed. It was half and half. I had one foot in each world, you know. I thought I belonged, and yeah, it was a confusing time for me. It was really confusing. And it stayed confusing for so long. The first time I tried to find out who my birth mother was, I was like 14 years old. I went to the hospital where that was the only thing my parents told me finally. I was like, where was I born? What time was I born? Who, all these questions. They said, oh, you were born in this hospital. I went to the hospital and I asked them for my birth certificate. I said, I was born here, am adopted. I was 14 years old, got all dressed up, made my girlfriend go with me. And I was like, and I want to know who my mother is. And I remember the lady at the desk was like, she was very nice. She went, well, honey, I don't have those records. So I said, well, but no, I was so, I was like, to me, it was so simple. I was born here. The woman was here, gave birth to me. Here's when I was born. Here's the time my parents told me and the day. And who is she? And it was hard for this woman, I remember, to say those records are sealed. I don't have that information. And my friend reminded me of this. I forgot about it actually. And I saw her like quite a few years ago. And she said, don't you remember you went there? And she said, you were devastated that you couldn't get it. And we took the subway home and you could barely talk. Because I just thought, like, why can't I have this? And then I just shut down. I didn't look for a really long time. And then, kind of reared its head again,
Keep going. Keep back. Come back to it.
you know. And then I went and I looked, I kept looking. I started again,
Oh,
but years later, I had to lick my wounds.
yeah.
But I love what your friend's mother did when she held her for the first time, saying you're adopted. Because somebody asked me that. They said, well, when do you think you should tell a child? I said, from the minute they're born. Just like, when you have a doll as a little girl, you adopted that doll, you love that doll. There's nothing wrong with it. That's your doll, that's your baby. I think too, for adoptees, it might be a question of telling them you're adopted and you're safe. Because I think safety is an issue for us, because any minute that maybe somebody's going to tell you real, they're not your
Yeah.
parents. Finding that out is
Yeah.
pulling the rug from out under
But
you.
your adoptive parents didn't feel safe. So
No, they didn't feel safe, so I
they
didn't feel
didn't feel safe, so neither did you.
no. Everybody was living in fear and
Yeah.
trepidation.
So the resolution of the early stage of the birth family, that was clearly huge for you, and setting up
Looking
Felix
for
was,
them. Yeah, yeah, finding them, going to the wrong place. It became comical, honestly, because I would go to these places. There was one place I went to, I met this family, and it, they weren't my family, and we knew it right away. I don't know why we thought it was. I went to their house. I had flowers. I had chocolates with me. It was just a joke. It was ridiculous. It was like I was going on a date, and I traveled. I went to Long Island, and I slept over their house because I missed the last train, and they were strangers, and I was like, again, another dead end, you know.
yeah.
So it became, did you ever see that movie Flirting with Disaster?
No.
Okay, you have to see this movie. It's Ben Stiller and I think Patricia Arquette and David O. Russell directed it. And David O. Russell is a really good director, and his sister was adopted. And I think he chose to do this movie because she went on a search and they look for their parents. Ben Stiller is going on a search for his parents, and it's really funny. And as with everything in life, there's humor in everything. And the searching, yes, it can be devastating to a 14-year-old. It can be heartbreaking, like you're in the wrong family. It could be awful because you find out your birth family are horrible people or they're great people and your adopted family was horrible. But the whole thing at the end of the day, it's, like everything in life, it has humor.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels like a good place to bring it in, Sheila.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing this and shedding light on something that not a lot of people get a chance to talk about and to explore. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, listeners. we'll speak
Okay.
to you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.